All right, good evening. It is Tuesday, June 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m. from the Twinsburg Government Center. I'm going to call the Finance Committee to session. First up is roll call. Greg Bellin is here. Mr. Post
I am here.
is here. The third member of our committee, Mr. Fury, is not here this evening. Also present is Councilwoman Walker, Mr. Scafidi, Mr. Yates, Mr. Vizana, and our illustrious Finance Director, Mrs. Butchgrass. Any audience participation? Seeing none, I will move forward to the approval of the May 24th, 2022 Finance Committee minutes.
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 24th, 2022 Finance Committee.
And I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. Approved minutes, May 24, 2022, approved 2-0. Next up is the 2023 appropriations process and CIB. Mrs. Butchgrass.
Thank you. Okay, so for the 2023 appropriations process, we kind of just recap every year how our appropriations process works over the summer. So this summer, we will sit down with the department heads. We'll send them some spreadsheets next week for them to make their budget requests. In the month of August, we will sit down with them and go through those requests and do just some initial review on the numbers, see where we're at, and also compile the capital improvement requests for Capital Improvement Board. The one thing I did want to talk to Finance Committee tonight about is if it would be okay if we again do a temporary appropriations. Reason being is that I do think it's important that we get this full year of the new work from home structure, you know, with that income tax language that changed with the state of Ohio. So how that would work is if we did the temporary appropriations, we would do our normal Capital Improvement Board process in August, September. We'd bring the temporary appropriations forward to Finance Committee at that November meeting, do 3 readings, and then January, February, March of next year, we would do the department head presentations for the permanent budget. So same thing that happened last year. That would be my suggestion, to do that at least one more time as we watch the income tax revenue situation.
Yeah, I certainly have no problem with that. Mr. Post,
I agree. If you don't know the future, you need to
Right.
Yeah,
be
I mean,
prepared for it.
right. And I think after this year, when we see, you know, how the income tax revenues shake out for that full year, next year we might be able to get back to just doing a permanent appropriation in December, if that's what Finance Committee wants to do at that time.
Yeah, so that was going to be my question. Do we feel that after this one cycle, things are going to shake out enough where with who's staying, who's going, who's working from home, that do we think that we'll have a decent enough understanding of what that looks like moving forward?
I hope to.
Okay.
You know, I have a slide here coming up, I think it's on the next one, that we'll talk a little bit about. We're already seeing the shakeup in our top employers, but we're not necessarily seeing a decline in income tax revenues. So that's really good news, because, you know, when you lose top employers like we have lately, you kind of have to brace for the worst. So it seems like right now we're holding steady, but I just think we need to get to the end of the year.
What do you think the reason is for that?
I think some of it is because of the net profits taxes, because 2021. So there's 2 different sides of our taxes, right? So there's the folks that work in the city get taxes withheld from their paycheck that they pay in, and that's our withholding tax.
Okay.
And then also, you know, people that live here in the city, if they got withheld at a lower amount, they would owe the difference to us. And then there's the net profits tax. And so that's, you know, people's corporate filings, their tax returns, their business returns, they file and pay us on the profits that they make at their company. So I think in 2021, we were seeing some pretty significant refunds from how bad 2020 was. You know, a lot of those companies took some big hits. So I think this year we're not seeing quite that bad of those net profit refunds, and I think that's helping a little bit. And I also think we just had a strong income tax season. And we also did that subpoena program, and that got us some money too. So, yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit on that next slide, but I'm surprised but pleasantly so
Okay.
thus far.
So then we're going to move forward then with a temporary budget in November. We'll do the department head presentations January, February, and March.
Right.
And then pass the final budget in March.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. We have to pass the final budget in March.
Do you need any official action out of Finance Committee or Council to do that?
We could, if you guys don't mind doing a motion to do temporary appropriations this year.
Okay. In Council or here?
I think Finance Committee would be fine. There's two of you.
Okay. Mr. Vazan, are we?
I think that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so then I'd like to make a motion then that Finance Committee would suggest to Council that we move forward with a temporary budget in November.
Yeah.
All right, may I have a second?
We want to make a motion to suggest it to council?
Or just for us to proceed preparing a temporary appropriation.
Okay, so it doesn't need to go to Council.
It'll still come back.
Right.
Yeah, it'll come to
But
council
it's just
via
worded that we would
legislation.
suggest
Okay.
to council.
Yeah.
Okay, so then so the motion then would be that Finance Committee would like to proceed with a temporary budget in November.
Right.
Okay, may I have a second?
Love to say.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, there
Great.
you go, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll, when we get through the end of the year and we do our January department head presentations and we talk about how 2022 closed out, we can talk then, do we feel comfortable that we know what our income tax situation looks like?
Sounds good?
As much as you can plan for these things. Okay, and then on the other side, we have capital improvement board. So we did scooch those meetings forward a little bit this year. So we're gonna start those on August 16th. And it will meet every Tuesday, and then our finance committee presentation will be on September 13th. So that's when capital improvement board will come to finance committee and present their recommendations on what, capital improvement projects and infrastructure projects they think should move forward to the budget.
Okay.
And those folks are all returning for their second year in their 2-year term, so that'll be nice to have everybody back. They're a really good group.
They were a good group.
Yeah, they're good. I just wanted to bring that to Finance Committee's attention because those Capital Improvement Board meetings, if you're able to attend any of them, they are really nice and informative, and we get a lot more in-depth on each one of those individual projects because we have those 4 meetings to go through them.
Okay.
And then just wanted to point out, one of our big things for Capital Improvement Board this year is you guys all got notification from the mayor of the grant that he secured through the state of Ohio that ODNR is going to process. So that is going to be a big commitment from the city side when we get into capital improvement budgeting. That was a just shy of $340,000 grant. And then the city portion is probably going to be a little bit higher than that based on some estimates we're getting back on the parts that we're going to move forward with. Okay, any questions about the appropriations process or moving forward with a temporary?
Nothing from me, Mr. Post?
No.
Rest of council? No, thank you.
Okay, great. So we'll do the collections update part since we already started talking about that with Rita. So our 2022 tax season, like we said, ended strong. So we're at $13.1 million compared to last year. We were at just shy of $12.1 million. So we are back up to pre-pandemic collection levels, which is great. And we like to see that, like we've been talking about, that increase, now that we're getting some of that back. It doesn't make up for necessarily the losses that we had throughout the pandemic on the income taxes. But it's good to see it going in the right direction and catching back up to those pre-pandemic levels. The main thing I think that we have to continue watching for is our labor and materials and capital project costs. if you look at that number, it's sort of catches back up to like a 222 increase. Well, our contracts were at 2.5, and obviously you guys have heard everything that we're buying is going significantly up in price. So it's great to see the income tax revenues going up, but our expenses are, those are going up at a much.
And they're going up fast.
They're going up faster than the income tax revenues are going up. How's that? Yeah. But I think that's what everybody is feeling, so it's just something we've really got to pay attention to. And like I mentioned, our top employer listings have changed. Those names have shaken around. That's information that we provide when we do the audit and things, so I don't have it on the slide. But those top employers that we were talking about leaving have dropped off of that list.
Sarah, so we're up $1.1 million. What's the percentage year over year?
Oh, it is.
Or Mr. Post, you might be able to do the math too. I can't do it.
No, I have it on my report. Give me just a second. It's 9.13.
We're up 9.13% year over year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, we had a really strong tax season combined with that subpoena program, and so it's good to see.
And the space that was vacated by those two employers is being heavily marketed. So, I know that Rebecca's, potentially been in contact, just keeping up to date on that. So hopefully that will happen next year, which would then again help build back some of the lost income from there.
Great.
Okay. Next up, because we are heading into Capital Improvement Board season, I wanted to take a moment and talk about our fixed asset capitalization policy. Back in 2015, council passed an ordinance that put into place a fixed asset policy for the city. And one of the sections is where we get that limitation or guideline for what goes to Capital Improvement Board and gets capitalized at the city. And it's something that lasts more than 5 years or more and costs $5,000 or more. So because we're talking about the expense increases and things like that, I wanted to see if there was consideration on the side of Finance Committee and Council to possibly increase that $5,000 limit. That $5,000 at this point is not, we're not even able to buy like basic office equipment. We can't go buy a copier. We've got to come back and do a whole, capital purchase request process. So I'm wondering if we could maybe talk about increasing that, maybe $7,500 to $10,000. I just wanted to bring it up and see how you guys felt about it.
I have no problem with either one of those dollar amounts. I mean, what you need to run it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
If you...
5,000 it's a lot of money, but if you look at what it costs to buy the things that the city buys right now.
Right. It's more than 5,000.
Right.
Yeah. So just
Yeah.
just so I'm clear, if we were to change that, say we changed it to $10,000, that would mean that any purchase below $10,000, which today is $5,000, would not need to go through the capital budgeting process?
Right. They would be
Okay.
able to purchase those things through their normal operating budgets, departmental budgets. It would not go to Capital Improvement Board. But you would still see the items.
As part of the budget.
As part of the full budget. Right. It's not that they would go away. We would still have that money in place.
Yeah.
It would just move line items and we wouldn't be capitalizing it. We have a list in our system of all the city's assets and they wouldn't be there anymore.
Yeah, I certainly have no problem taking that to 10,000. My concern is if we do it to 7,500, 3 years from now we're gonna have to do it. We're gonna be in the same boat. Nothing's
Would
Right.
it be better to do it incrementally, or does it not matter? I mean, I'm fine going to 10,000 if that's what you think also. Is that...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would probably say just do it once and be done with it. I don't know. Any Daisy, Sam,
I
any?
agree.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. So you said we passed that there was an ordinance?
There was an ordinance passed in 2015 to establish the fixed asset policy.
Okay.
So I have an email into, law in the clerk's office to make sure, we would just essentially bring that whole policy. I'll look through the policy, make sure there's any other updates we want to do.
Okay.
And then I'd bring that forward.
Okay.
For
Yeah, I
council
would have
approval.
I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah. And I'll make sure, with auditors and all that good stuff that, we're not missing any processes
Yeah.
that we need to do.
So
I just kind of wanted to feel out
Yeah.
if anybody was even interested in raising that dollar amount.
No, that makes sense to me. It just sounds like we're purchasing this stuff either way, and essentially what we're doing is taking line items off of the CIB's plate that they have to,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, because it's sort of, you get into these discussions in CIB where you're talking about a $250,000 truck, and
And a
then you have to
$5,000
switch
copier.
gears and
Yeah.
talk about a
Okay.
$6,000
Yeah.
copier, yeah.
okay, yeah, no, I have no
So
problem.
we're just trying to maybe even that out a little bit.
I would think that it would, if we could, it would make sense to do that prior to the August meetings of the CIB, but I don't know.
Yeah, that would mean that it would have to be passed on emergency in July. So if there's a
Okay.
comfortability with that, I mean, I can get my research done.
I
by
don't know, I'll defer to Mr. Vazana. I don't know if that's,
When is the meeting?
Well, I just made the comment, if we're gonna change this limit, raise it from 5 to 10, it would be nice to get that change in place prior to this year's cycle of the CIB. Now, I don't know if we have to do it prior to August, or if we can just do it prior to the budget, I don't know what that looks
It would
like.
have to be done prior to the meeting of the CIP.
Okay,
That would change, if you look at the code, the fixed asset policy, as I understand it, interacts with the jurisdiction of the CIP. So we would have to make the change to the code that sets forth,
prior to that.
the limits. And
Yeah.
I think we might be,
The code refers back to the ordinance.
Right,
yeah, I think we might be a little tight on that.
okay. So we'll do
Yeah.
it, so we'll just get it done for next year then.
Yeah.
It gives us a little more time to marinate with numbers.
That's fine.
And, really
Yeah.
flesh out what.
Yeah, we can bring it in the fall, and capital improvement board, I mean, there's usually not too many items at that $5,000 to $10,000 amount anyway. It's more of a throughout the year operationally, it would be nice to be able to, buy something that's $5,500.
Right, no, that makes sense.
As opposed to taking up CIB stuff.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, great. We will work on that over the summer and bring it back to you.
Okay, that said, we are now on to the comments or questions portion of our agenda.
Do you want to finish this, or
I have one item for under miscellaneous.
Okay.
or you want to do it in miscellaneous? not
Yeah.
Part of this, okay.
Mr. Post, any comments or questions?
No.
No, nothing from me. Mrs. Walker?
Nothing.
Mr. Scafidi?
Nothing here.
Mayor? Mr. Vazana? Okay. All right, next up is miscellaneous. Mrs. Buccigross.
Yeah, so I just, I had sent out some information to council over the past week or so that we did get the determination on the Glen Eagles property tax exemption application that we turned in. We turned in that application back in February of 2020. So it took almost 2.5 years to get that determination back. So we have it now, and I just wanted to go over what we applied for and what the decision came back at. We had asked for tax exemption for the full course and the full building on our initial application, and then we did send the state and the county additional information when we leased out the restaurant and banquet space, because that sort of adds to the story of the clubhouse that we have a tenant in there who is a for-profit entity. So we did send that information down to them, which I think is, between that and the pandemic, is probably why it took a little longer to do the termination. I think usually they take like a year and a half. So it did take a little bit to get that back. So for 2019, the determination, and I confirmed this after reading through everything from the state, I confirmed it with Summit County. For 2019, the property tax and the penalty that we had been charged is going to be removed. So that is 200, what's that? Yeah, so the full amount there that you see on that top line will be removed. And Summit County's working on that now. We'll get into just a minute, but there is an appeals process we can briefly discuss, and once they know if we're going to appeal the decision or not, then they can start their work to redo the bill. So for 2020, the property tax and the penalty will also be removed. And then when we get into 2021, which is when we had our lease, our tenant was up and running, the penalty will still be removed. The property tax is going to be reduced as opposed to removed altogether. I don't have an estimate on what that new dollar amount is going to be. In just brief conversations with the county, the course itself is not taxable. That's still a government-run operation. And like the pro shop, where we store our golf courts and the charging, all that is still, government-run. But it's those sections that we're leasing out to the restaurant and the banquet center will become taxable. So one of the things that we're looking at is there anybody, in our area in the state of Ohio that has a similar situation that they did allow the entire building to be still tax exempt, even though they have somebody in there running, restaurant or banquet operations. So if we can find an example of that, that would be my only thought of how we would have a case to appeal it. And I don't know just yet. We know a couple cities that do have clubhouses that they're outsourcing those services. I'm just not sure if they're tax exempt. We have to do a little more research because this decision, there was a publicly made decision that actually got redone. So that's why we got notice of it a little bit later. So it just got made on the 22nd.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about that? So is there any part of it that is government owned or run is not taxed? Is that correct?
Right, so the stuff that the city is running is still going to be non-taxable.
So like when you're looking at the golf course,
It's just that
to make sure I
area-
understood you right. Like, so we are only taxed on the part that is outsourced
Right.
to them,
The restaurant and the banquet center.
the restaurant and the banquet center. But when we owned it then a couple of years ago, I don't know how long we switched over. So were we paying no taxes on
Well,
anything?
so you have to go from back before the new clubhouse was built. Everything was tax exempt at that time.
100%.
And
We
then,
paid zero taxes.
correct, when the new clubhouse itself was built, we had to reapply for the whole tax exempt, we had to go through the whole procedure all over again when that building was built. So
And
at
so-
the time that we first applied, we were still running the whole thing.
So when did they jump in?
Which is why this chart starts in 2020, which is when that facility was built.
This
So
does
2019.
I'm sorry, 2019. So prior to that, that's the old building. There wasn't a tenant per se. We were running everything. So then we reapplied in 2019, and then it has taken them a couple years at this point to
Right.
make their determination. But where they jumped in was 2021.
Right, so we're gonna pay nothing in 19,
Right,
we're gonna pay nothing in 20.
Yep.
correct.
And we're gonna pay in 21. My question is,
Yeah. Which is actually the current year billing. It's tax, we're behind a year on
Right.
property taxes, so
correct. Scott
tax year
knows the math.
2021,
Yeah, I can't wait to pay all these
the
bills.
2022 billing,
All
yeah.
right, I guess my question is this. The amount of money that comes in from them is roughly 10,000 a year, 10,000 a month, or 9,000 a month, it's like 100,000 a year, right?
8,500 a month, yeah.
8,500 a month, so it's not even 10,000. I guess it almost seems silly to lease it to them for $8,500 a month if the taxes are gonna cost us more than that a month.
So
It's not silly, but it's like.
I think what
It's like
we had
without-
to,
It's a losing venture then to
Right.
lease it to them.
what
for
we
less
had
than
to,
what we have to pay in taxes. Better we pay no taxes, right?
so what we had to take in consideration was our
Is that
ability
You have to have
in-house.
food and drink, but
So we had to take into consideration how much it cost us to run the restaurant and banquet center. We ran those operations at a loss. So in 2019, when we ran those two operations, operationally, we lost about $130,000 running the restaurant and the banquet center ourselves, just operationally. So when you take a $130,000 loss versus $102,000 coming in the door from the
No,
lease.
I don't
payment.
disagree, but this was something we wouldn't have thought about back then because we didn't even, right? I mean,
Right, we did think about the potential property tax exempt issue. Like I said, running it in-house, we were losing money.
I don't
And so
disagree
that
with the
was,
decision. I'm just saying.
yeah, that, we had to
that-
take that into consideration when we were looking at the possible property tax.
I just think it should be something to take into consideration perhaps when you're evaluating or whatnot, you know,
Yeah, I think that.
That's all, like-
I think
breaking even
Getting-
at least on that aspect of it.
getting out of, so when you look in context, getting out of the food and beverage business over there was a huge win for us. Getting an operator of the level that we have
For sure.
was a huge benefit to us. Doing it in the middle of a pandemic was a huge
Agreed.
benefit to us. And there are escalations. We have to be very creative on how we escalate that particular lease because we're a public entity. So the escalations in that, we're hoping will, as we come up for that renewal, next year, that they'll start seeing some increases. And then, of course, when the contract is up, then all these factors can come into play in council,
Right.
can negotiate, have discussions, negotiate. But, our goal was to get in a good operator, let them be successful, hopefully they'll stay. I mean, the last thing we want is to have big gaps and no restaurant, especially the way those operations run. If they're not successful and they bail, then we have a vacant restaurant.
Right. No, I don't
and
disagree with any of that.
angry golfers, and, it just defeats the whole purposes of the
Right.
operation.
Yeah,
So.
maybe my message came out wrong. All I'm saying is that.
No, I think I understand you. I completely understand your message. I mean, in the modern world, if I was leasing a restaurant at Beechwood Mall, it would be a triple net lease, and based on estimated maintenance, taxes, everything would get pushed into that lease, and,
Right.
and then some profit. So, I mean,
That's all
that's-
I almost don't even need profit at that point, but just not take a loss.
no, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. But,
Right.
and
I'll stop talking.
okay.
No, I understand where you're going with it, and I think this determination will definitely play a factor in the renewal of that contract. Now that we know what the determination is and what our property tax, by the time that we renegotiate with those folks, we'll know what our property tax bill is each year.
Perfect. That's
Yeah.
all I was saying. Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
I get you.
Cool.
So any questions about that property tax determination? Because most likely I will be coming back to council in the fall to ask for an appropriation amendment to be able to pay the bill, and/or in the next couple weeks, we'll be talking to you about whether or not we want to file an appeal if we have found any similar operations that we think we might be able to state a case to have a bigger piece tax exempt.
When do you anticipate getting that final number for 2021? I want to hold you to it, I'm just curious.
So if we decide not to appeal, I would guess that we would have that number, the amount due with probably like 30 to 60 days.
Okay.
It's a little bit complicated of a calculation that
It's-
county
it's
has
the
to do.
summer, though.
So
Okay, that's fine.
maybe 90 days.
If there's no precedence anywhere about this, how are they determining? Just based on pure square footage, percentage of the building, or?
So that they have a copy of the lease agreement, and yes, but they cited code sections on why it becomes taxable, property taxable. Yeah. And that's on that determination letter that you guys have a copy of.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? No? All right. That being said, the next meeting of the Finance Committee will be on September 13th, 2022 at 6 p.m. here in Council Chambers. And with that, we will adjourn the Finance Committee meeting at 6:30 p.m.